about the genetic characteristics of what we call a natural elongated skull. Also, the suture lines. Here is the suture running across this way, but there is no sign of the sagittal suture whatsoever.
What if an ancient discovery could upend everything we thought we knew about human history? In the remote deserts of Peru, archaeologists uncovered more than 300 elongated skulls dating back 3,000 years.
So this is one of the Paracas elongated skulls. This is one that we believe is natural in shape. And as I turn it, you will see the complexity of the design.
Bodies wrapped in exquisite textiles and buried with artifacts reserved for society's most elite. These skulls are not just oddly shaped, their DNA contains baffling clues that challenge the mainstream story of human evolution and migration. Are these remains evidence of a forgotten civilization, or something far more unsettling lurking beneath the surface of science itself? The mystery of the elongated skulls. In the arid deserts of Peru, an archaeological discovery surfaced that immediately captured global attention. Over 300 elongated skulls were found carefully arranged inside intricate stone tombs, known as chulpas, beneath the desert floor. Their exaggerated, stretched shapes defied everyday human anatomy and raised a thorny question. Were these skulls merely the product of an ancient cultural tradition, or something far stranger? At first glance, these elongated heads appeared to be the result of deliberate deformation, a practice known in many societies where infant skulls are tightly bound to achieve a desired shape. However, what set these skulls apart wasn't just their obvious length, but a series of anomalies that puzzled scientists from the start. Some of the skulls were reportedly up to 25% larger in volume than a typical human skull, with weights up to 60% heavier. These facts challenged the long-held assumption that cranial deformation only changes the external shape but cannot increase skull mass or volume. Such details hinted that these elongated skulls might not be shaped solely by external forces, but could also reflect unique biological traits. Further compounding the puzzle was the absence of the sagittal suture, a seam normally present on the top of every human skull. This connective tissue separates the two parietal bones and typically fuses naturally during childhood. Yet, in numerous Paracas skulls, the suture was completely missing, replaced instead by a single, solid bone plate. While this condition, known medically as craniosynostosis, can occur as a rare birth defect, its widespread presence among this elite group made purely pathological causes unlikely. The implications of these physical findings struck at the heart of long-held scientific explanations and traditions regarding head elongation. If the skulls were not simply warped by binding, then what accounts for their abnormal density and construction? How could a cultural practice create such consistent and anatomical differences in an entire population? The questions began to multiply, pointing toward a genetic or evolutionary divergence that science had scarcely anticipated. Despite these red flags, some mainstream anthropologists still maintained that the Paracas skulls fell within human variation when considering features like eye sockets and cranial shape overall. These traits, while extreme, were not enough evidence alone to claim anything other than an unusually shaped human skull. Yet the growing catalog of anomalies, from size to weight to bone structure, left many researchers uneasy and demanding deeper investigation. When radiocarbon dating confirmed the remains were between 2,800 and 3,000 years old, the timeline forced a reconsideration of the Paracas civilization's place in history. This was not a modern curiosity, but a long-lost culture predating the Inca by 2 millennia, calling into question how such advanced practices and distinctive skeletal traits evolved so early. The confluence of advanced textiles, ceremonial artifacts, and these strange skulls painted a story both elaborate and evasive. The eerie scene of the tombs, with each body swathed in fine woven textiles and buried alongside obsidian blades and gold jewelry, only added another layer of mystery. These were not ordinary graves. These were the final resting places of a powerful elite, people who clearly held great social importance. Their burials suggested complex beliefs and rituals, hinting their unique skulls symbolized status, or perhaps something far deeper. Still, the core of the mystery remained unresolved. Could these elongated skulls be a genetic inheritance from a completely different human lineage, or even an unknown origin? The answer would require peering deeply into the material bones, and ultimately, into their DNA. This enigma posed one of the most profound questions science might face about human variation and history. The discovery challenged not just archaeology, but the very narrative of human ancestry, setting the stage for revelations that scientists hadn't anticipated, and that would force a rethinking of what it means to be human. This bewildering foundation invites us to step back and understand the society that created such remarkable burials and those extraordinary skulls. Ancient Paracas civilization. The people behind these remarkable tombs belong to what is now known as the Paracas civilization, an ancient culture that flourished on the southern coast of Peru roughly between 800 and 200 BCE. Far from being an isolated group, the Paracas were among the earliest complex societies in the Andes region, laying cultural groundwork that would influence later civilizations like the Nazca and, eventually, the Inca. Archaeological evidence reveals that the Paracas were skilled artisans and engineers. Their textiles, found wrapped delicately around the bodies, display intricate patterns and vibrant dyes rarely seen in other ancient cultures of similar age. These fabrics alone testify to an advanced knowledge of weaving techniques and a deep appreciation for symbolic artistry, indicating a highly sophisticated society. The tombs they built, the chulpas, are feats of architectural precision carved deep underground. Unlike simple burial pits, these stone-lined chambers were crafted to endure, signaling a belief in the importance of preserving status and memory long after death. The careful placement of bodies, often wrapped with such care and interred alongside ceremonial objects, points to a culture with strong social hierarchies and complex spiritual concepts. The elite burials of the Paracas culture were entirely different from the commoners' ones. The commoners were simply buried with basic pots or tools, while the Paracas were laid to rest with ceremonial tools, such as obsidian blades that were sharper than steel, and extravagant gold ornaments and jewelry made from seashells. It is very likely that the items indicated power, prestige, and religious role in the society, and were not just simply for decoration. The size and skill of the tombs and artifacts speak of a civilization whose rulers not only had power over a large population, but also had a very organized system. This ruling class might consist of the kings, priests, and warriors, and would hold the whole area under their influence and fear. Nevertheless, their greatness would be recognized in more than just the opulence of their material possessions, and they would be defined by their relatively small number. The most permanent symbol of the Paracas, who despite little cultural richness in textiles and artifacts, had the most enduring symbol, is undoubtedly their horizontally elongated skulls. Though the trait of elongation of the head became a cultural hallmark, its significance and origin are still mystery. It has been suggested by scholars that the practice might have been for the nobility, marked a distinguished ancestry, or was a connection to divine heritage. The Paracas culture also predates the Nazca culture, which is famous for the geoglyphs that were carved into the desert very close to the Paracas area. This means that the development of complex societies in the Andean region needs to be redated by several hundred years, and the whole story of South American civilizations rewritten in this respect. The Paracas demonstrate that complex social formations and artistic excellence were in existence much earlier than had been previously believed. Understanding the Paracas civilization offers critical context for interpreting the skulls and their burial customs. It opens questions about how such a society developed sophisticated beliefs regarding identity and lineage, possibly encoded in physical form. Their culture does not exist in isolation. It invites comparisons with other early advanced societies across the globe. Still, the skulls themselves stand apart, hinting that the Paracas elite might have been more than just a remarkable ancient people. They could represent a unique biological lineage that science has yet to fully grasp. And so, the mystery stretches beyond anthropology into the realm of genetics. We must consider the skull anomalies in detail to appreciate just how extraordinary this population truly was. Skull anomalies beyond shape. The elongated skulls of the Paracas have drawn the most attention, yet their abnormal length is just the surface of a much deeper mystery. When closely examined, these skulls differ fundamentally from normal human crania in ways that artificial binding cannot explain. Their cranial volume, for example, is often reported as being up to 25% larger than average human skulls. This increase in size is significant because traditional cranial deformation alters shape, not volume. Binding an infant's head can flatten or elongate the skull, but it doesn't add bone mass or expand the interior space of the brain case. The Paracas skulls, with their increased mass, up to 60% heavier, trouble any simple cultural explanation. Another striking feature is the near-complete absence of the sagittal suture on many skulls. This suture normally divides the two parietal bones during early development, only fusing fully in adulthood. The lack of this suture in such numbers suggests a genetic trait rather than a random birth defect like craniosynostosis, which is rare and usually isolated. CT scans support these incredibly unusual findings. The internal bone structure appears denser and more uniform than expected, resembling natural growth rather than deformation caused by external pressures. This robustness contradicts the idea that the skulls were simply reshaped by binding, implying a biological difference in bone formation. Interestingly, despite claims floating in public forums about alien or non-human features, mainstream experts assert that some traits, such as enlarged eye sockets, fit within the wider range of human variability. Yet the combination of size, weight, bone density, and missing sutures makes the Paracas skulls a scientific anomaly. This complex picture challenges assumptions and suggests the presence of a unique genetic lineage with distinct cranial development patterns. If the skulls were just shaped differently, these additional factors would not be present in such consistency across so many specimens. Such physical attributes raise profound questions about who these individuals were and how this population fits into the broader human family tree. Were these anomalies the result of natural evolution, genetic mutation, or an unknown influence? The debate is ongoing, but the evidence calls for a more nuanced investigation. Understanding these skull differences is a crucial step before unraveling the genetic secrets locked within ancient DNA, which may hold the key to the Paracas enigma. The revelations within the bones steer the inquiry toward genetic analysis, deep beneath the surface of visible mystery. Artificial cranial deformation limitations. Artificial cranial deformation is an ancient practice found in many parts of the world, where infants' heads are tightly bound to intentionally alter their shape. This technique can create elongated or flattened skulls by applying external pressure during early development. For years, this explanation was accepted as the reason behind the unusual Paracas skulls, an extreme form of a known cultural tradition. However, this reasoning begins to falter under closer scientific scrutiny. The key limitation of cranial deformation is that it changes the skull's shape but does not increase its size or mass. Medical experts confirm that binding can reshape an infant's skull because it is soft and malleable. But once hardened, the bone volume and density remain the same. The Paracas specimens, however, display increased cranial volume and substantial weight gain, facts that contradict any simple binding explanation. Another critical point lies in the internal structure of the skulls. CT scans reveal that bone density in these elongated skulls appears to be naturally formed and unusually robust, not the result of external compression or deformation. The bone tissue itself exhibits uniform strength and thickness, which would not arise from artificial reshaping. This suggests biological growth patterns that differ from the ways bones typically develop under mechanical pressure. Moreover, the consistent absence of the sagittal suture in many skulls cannot be attributed to cranial binding. This suture is a crucial feature in normal human skull anatomy, and its total lack across an entire elite population is statistically improbable as a coincidence or birth defect cluster. The uniformity hints at a heritable trait unique to this group's genetic lineage. For decades, these facts were overshadowed by the assumption that head binding explained all physical oddities. Some researchers selectively accepted cultural explanations while overlooking anomalies that hinted at something more profound. The skull shape alone is non-standard, but when combined with abnormalities in mass, bone density, and suture absence, the case for artificial deformation weakens considerably. This leaves an uncomfortable vacuum in our understanding. If traditional cranial deformation does not fully explain these differences, then what does? The phenomena point to a unique biology or evolutionary path, one that challenges simplistic interpretations and demands fresh scientific inquiry. Scientists also had to reconsider the role of genetics versus culture in explaining the elongated skulls. While cultural practices can modify physical appearance, they cannot rewrite the genetic codes responsible for fundamental skull characteristics. The Paracas skulls seem to straddle this line, exhibiting features shaped by both environment and heredity, yet defying easy categorization. This growing scientific uncertainty fueled debates and raised fundamental questions about human diversity and ancient lineage classifications. Were these people human as we define it, or did they belong to a distinct subgroup with inherited genetic traits? The limitations of cranial deformation as a sole explanation forced researchers to look deeper, reaching toward the next logical step in their investigation: DNA. As physical evidence hit a wall, genetic analysis promised to unlock secrets impossible to hide beneath layers of bone and earth. Cutting-edge DNA analysis, extracting DNA from remains thousands of years old, is a delicate and challenging endeavor, and the Paracas skulls provided an exceptional opportunity due to their preservation. The harsh desert climate of the region acted as a natural preservative, keeping organic material like hair, skin, teeth, and bone intact enough for detailed genetic study. This rare preservation allowed scientists to attempt one of the most ambitious ancient DNA analyses to date. Researchers focused on mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, because it is more abundant and resilient than nuclear DNA. Passed down exclusively from mother to child, mtDNA offers a clear maternal lineage record and mutates at a predictable rate, making it ideal for tracing ancient populations and comparing them with modern human groups. Sampling involved painstakingly sterile protocols to avoid contamination, with scientists donning full clean suits and sterilizing every tool meticulously. Samples were acquired not only from bone powder drilled from inside the skulls, but also from remarkably intact strands of hair and preserved skin tissue. These diverse sources increased the likelihood of obtaining reliable genetic material. To ensure accuracy and prevent biased results, the samples were sent to several independent laboratories in the United States, each conducting blind testing. The scientific community expected the results to confirm what anthropology had long assumed, that the Paracas people belonged to Native American haplogroups, genetically linked to populations who migrated from Asia across the Bering Land Bridge roughly 15,000 years ago. Such a finding would neatly align with the accepted histories of the Americas. Instead, the results were completely unexpected and profoundly unsettling. Preliminary DNA sequences revealed mutations unlike any previously known in humans, primates, or other animals. The lab director reportedly admitted confusion, unable to match the sequences to any known species or lineage. This unprecedented genetic signature threw the entire anthropological narrative into question and sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Even more perplexing was the ancestry indicated by the DNA markers. Instead of clear links to local South American tribes, the haplogroups found bore startling resemblance to genetic markers common thousands of miles away, in regions near the Black Sea, the Caucasus Mountains, and ancient Mesopotamia. These populations are separated from Peru by vast oceans and continents, making direct contact seem impossible under established migration models. This haunting discovery implies that the Paracas people's maternal lineage traces back to some of the earliest centers of civilization in the Old World, rather than exclusively to indigenous peoples of the Americas. The idea that such genetic material traveled across oceans and continents 3,000 years ago challenges the foundations of accepted human migration theories. Scientists now faced a dilemma: how to reconcile this evidence with established history. Could these individuals be descendants of ancient travelers, traders, or even a lost civilization with a wide reach? The paradoxical DNA data demanded new perspectives on human dispersal, interaction, and cultural diffusion across prehistoric times. This genetic enigma fueled not only scientific debate, but also speculative hypotheses about global ancient civilizations. Was the Paracas lineage a remnant of forgotten global connections, or was there a simpler explanation yet to emerge? The answers remained locked in the strands of ancient DNA, beckoning researchers to look closer and think bigger. The breakthroughs in genetic analysis opened doors to possibilities once considered fringe, setting a tantalizing stage for what the following discoveries would reveal. The strange genetic traces connected to faraway lands now bring into question everything we believe about ancient peoples and their journeys. Unexpected genetic origins. The DNA results from the Paracas skulls sent shockwaves through the scientific community, revealing genetic markers that defied all previous assumptions. Instead of showing clear links to indigenous Native American populations, which would align with the accepted theory of migration from Asia across the Bering Land Bridge, the genetic signatures pointed in an entirely different direction. These markers, called haplogroups, connected the Paracas lineage to areas thousands of miles away, including Europe and the Middle East. Scientists identified haplogroups associated with regions around the Black Sea, the Caucasus Mountains, and even ancient Mesopotamia, centers of some of the earliest known civilizations. This raised a staggering question. How did these genetic lineages travel across vast oceans and continents to appear in Peru 3,000 years ago? Traditional histories of human migration simply cannot account for such findings, forcing a re-evaluation of long-held beliefs about the peopling of the Americas. These haplogroups act like genetic family names, tracing bloodlines back through countless generations. The stark absence of expected Native American genetic markers alongside the presence of these foreign haplogroups suggested that the Paracas people were not merely a local population, but bore ancestry from distant and seemingly disconnected parts of the ancient world. This revelation challenges the crowded timeline of human dispersal and raises the possibility of unknown migratory events or contacts far earlier than previously documented. The presence of such genetic markers also raises broader implications about the nature of cultural exchange in the ancient world. If populations from such distant regions were interacting, even indirectly, it hints at a network of long-distance travel, trade, or migration that defies common understanding. Could the Paracas have descended from travelers or settlers who arrived from these distant civilizations? This discovery adds a profound layer to the mystery surrounding the Paracas skulls. The blend of local Andean culture with genetic roots tied to far-flung old-world societies suggests a unique fusion or even survival of a lost global lineage. It forces anthropologists and historians alike to question the neat, linear accounts of human history and contemplate a past far more interconnected and complex. Such far-reaching genetic links also fuel debates in the scientific community. Some scholars propose that isolated migration events, maybe across now-vanished land bridges or via primitive sea travel, could explain these anomalies. Others entertain the idea of forgotten civilizations whose influence spanned continents before fading into obscurity. The evidence from the Paracas skulls is not just an anomaly to be dismissed. It demands a deeper exploration of prehistoric human movement and interaction. The findings prompt us to reconsider how technological, cultural, and genetic legacies might have been shared much earlier and more broadly than history books acknowledge. As the puzzle deepens, the implications extend beyond archaeology and genetics, touching upon the foundations of civilization itself. The Paracas genetic enigma beckons a new chapter in understanding humanity's shared past, one filled with unexpected journeys and enigmatic connections. This astonishing genetic footprint leaves us wondering how these distant ties transform our view of a world once thought isolated by oceans and mountains. Implications for human migration. The extraordinary genetic evidence from the Paracas skulls confronts the established narrative of human migration head-on, suggesting that ancient peoples may have traveled and interacted across oceans long before historians believed possible. The prevailing theory asserts that the Americas were settled by small groups crossing the Bering Land Bridge about 15,000 years ago, slowly spreading south over millennia. But these new findings raise the question, could there have been ancient transoceanic contact between distant civilizations thousands of years before Columbus. The Paracas people carried genetic markers tracing back to Europe and the Middle East. It implies a level of prehistoric mobility and exchange more sophisticated than previously recognized. This challenges the idea that ancient ocean voyages were accidental or non-existent. Instead, it supports theories that maritime travel and cultural diffusion played a larger role in human history, connecting continents in ways mainstream archaeology has largely overlooked. Such revelations undermine the long-held assumption that civilizations developed strictly in isolated regions without significant cross-continental influences. If populations with Old World genetic signatures were living in Peru 3,000 years ago, it suggests interactions that could have facilitated the transfer of ideas, technology, and even bloodlines. This could explain the advanced textiles, precise burials, and unique physiological traits seen in the Paracas elite. On top of that, the ancient transoceanic migration possibility compels the historians to take a fresh look at ancient trade routes and sailing commensurate. It also increases the probability of seafaring cultures having crossed enormous waters much earlier than the era of history writing, probably, supported by lost or forgotten technologies. Such crossings could have taken place ages before the explorers' famous voyages, thus knocking the history of interconnections and evolution of the world's civilizations over. Notwithstanding, this evidence is subject to the strictest assessment and skepticism, as it does not conform to the prevailing academic opinions. The notion of the ancient continents being in contact with one another is contentious and discouragingly dismissed without thorough inquiry. Nevertheless, the DNA of the Paracas skulls provides scientifically valid evidence that cannot be completely ignored, but rather requires an open examination of it. If the migrations and the gene transfers were actually happening, the whole picture of cultural diffusion would change, giving a view of the past that was very different from the isolated and disconnected world that the textbooks depict. Furthermore, it could also mean that there were powerful civilizations spread across the globe that later, now, as these civilizations are still under the archaeological record, their influence on the development of societies might still be hidden. On the other hand, some contend that the Paracas skulls are the remains of a line of a global civilization that has survived and has lost its place in the history. The so-called mother culture has played a role in the distribution of not only the knowledge, but also the genetic material across the ancient world. Although the idea is speculative, it gives a reference point for the understanding of the strange combination of foreign DNA and sophisticated culture traits. Whatever the truth, the implications rewrite the parameters of human history. The elongated skulls, coupled with their unexpected genetics, suggest that our ancestors' journeys were more complex and daring, spanning oceans and continents in pursuit of survival, knowledge, or conquest. As these hidden paths come to light, humanity's story expands from isolated beginnings to a grand tapestry woven by ancient travelers crossing great divides. The evolving picture of ancient migration now beckons us to explore how these early wanderers shaped the world in ways that continue to surprise and challenge us today. Theories of lost civilizations. The astonishing genetic and archaeological evidence from the Paracas skulls has sparked a wave of alternative theories that challenge conventional history. One of the most compelling ideas is diffusionism, the notion that advanced knowledge and cultural traits originated from a single powerful global civilization, spreading its influence far and wide before mysteriously disappearing. This theory suggests that the Paracas elite, with their distinct physiology and foreign DNA, could be remnants of that vanished mother culture. Legends of lost civilizations like Atlantis or Mu often surface in discussions of the Paracas mystery. According to these narratives, a technologically and spiritually advanced society was wiped out by a cataclysmic event, such as a great flood or planetary shift. The survivors, bearing unique genetic markers and esoteric knowledge, reportedly scattered across the globe, becoming founders or influencers of later ancient civilizations, including those in Egypt, Sumer, and South America. The elaborate burials and exquisite craftsmanship found in the Paracas tombs serve as supporting evidence for this line of thinking. The sophisticated textiles, precise astronomical knowledge, and advanced burial customs suggest a culture more complex than previously assumed. The practice of skull elongation in this context may have symbolized a deliberate effort to emulate the physical traits of their divine or ancestral forebears, marking status as direct descendants of a superior lost race. Within this framework, the Paracas become custodians of ancient wisdom, preserving fragments of a once glorious civilization erased from mainstream history. Their genetic distinctiveness and unique physical traits are seen not as anomalies, but as defining features of a noble lineage, desperate to maintain identity in a world that had plunged into darkness and disorder. This interpretation also fuels controversy in modern academia. Allegations of suppression and secrecy surround the study of these skulls and their DNA results. Some propose that mainstream institutions resist acknowledging such evidence because it threatens deeply entrenched scientific and historical paradigms. This resistance has only intensified public fascination and speculation, driving a deluge of conspiracy theories. Enthusiasts argue that governments and academic bodies are actively concealing groundbreaking discoveries that could rewrite history and challenge current power structures. While these theories remain highly debated, they underscore the profound impact the Paracas findings have had on both scientific inquiry and popular imagination. Whether viewed as evidence of a lost global civilization or misunderstood cultural practices, the Paracas skulls invite us to reconsider how fragile and incomplete our understanding of the past truly is. Above all, this narrative forces us to confront unsettling questions. What else has history hidden from us, and who decides the truths we accept? The Paracas enigmatic lineage serves as a potent reminder that humanity's story might be far more complex and mysterious than textbooks reveal. As curiosity deepens, the legacy of the Paracas challenges us to explore beyond accepted facts, daring us to keep searching for answers in the shadows of forgotten time. The Paracas skulls have shattered long-standing assumptions, revealing a mystery that forces us to rethink human history and our origins. Their unusual biology, baffling genetics, and extraordinary culture hint at secrets still waiting to be uncovered. If these ancient people were truly connected to forgotten global civilizations, the implications are profound. If you found this story fascinating, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.